And now, our feature presentation.
Hey, MJ. I have another name for you. Craven. He's here on some kind of hunt. You know, if you need me, I'm just a call away.
Lee, you don't know what you took from me.
All Miles talks about is how to be a better Spider-Man. How to help you.
What the hell's going on with Pete?
He's not himself. Go help him.
This was our dream. I'm not going to lose him.
We're going to heal the world.
Hey guys, welcome back to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, but I'm not alone as I swing through the streets of New York as one of the Spider Pals today. I am, of course, joined by my compatriots, my very own Miles Morales, yet definitely not of that nationality.
Alex, the producer?
Yes, we are back here on This Week in Geeks, the prototype. This is the show where we talk about video games and things adjacent to that space. But this is actually one of our extended reviews. The last time we did one of these, we took a look at the Ubisoft game Assassin's Creed Mirage. We reviewed it on the PlayStation 5. Here, we're going to be taking a look at yet another game we got from our friends at Sony Computer Entertainment. We're going to be talking about Insomniac's Spider-Man 2. We were both provided review codes for this game just prior to launch. And as of now, both of us have rolled credits on this game. I have the platinum. I don't think Alex is too far behind me. And
I'm maybe 4 or 5 trophies behind.
And I got a feeling I know which ones they are because they're ones you have to specifically hunt for.
I'm not going to do any
things.
gliding around town. I'm not going to
That
glide
one
from
was
one side of town to the other. No, I'm not doing that. I don't do trophies that are out of the way. You know what I mean?
That one took me about 10 minutes to do, but I had to retry a bunch only because I couldn't find a good position to get into. And the other one, you just have to find yourself a good long area of road, and I recommend the Financials District for the Hang 10 trophy, and that's do 30 tricks in a row without touching the ground. And because I did it at end game, because I had all the maximum mobility things in place, it was really easy. But I did do a little bit of research into it because I wanted to make sure I was doing it correctly. For some people, it didn't trigger. So that being said, during this review for this extended discussion, we're going to avoid as many spoilers as we can. But that being said, given the trailer, we know Venom's in it. You know you can play as the two Spider-Men and you can freely switch between them most of the time, but anything else, we'll try and talk around it as best we possibly can.
Minimal spoilers, but there has to be some degree to talk about a game that is 90% a single-player story campaign.
Yeah, like in our experience with this game, I've probably played about 30 hours to get the platinum. The last 2 trophies that I cleared last night were the one where Alex is talking about fly from one end of city to the other. That's fly from the Financial District to Astoria. It's just about finding the right rooftop and riding the right thermal vents. Once you get onto the river, it's really easy to get it. Beyond there, then the other one is Hang 10. And then the other 2 trophies that were annoying, I did have to look up guides for, is find the science trophy between you and Finn from Miles Morales. So that picks up after that story. And then visit May Parker's grave. Sorry, Spider-Man 2018, 2023.
That one I figured out on my own when I realized that again, mild spoiler, as Miles, you end up visiting the graveyard and you can see as an optional maze gravestone. And I was like, wonder what happens if I come back as Peter. And when you do so, you get a trophy.
Yeah, so other than that, every other trophy was really, really easy to get. One of the trophies, you do have to do something post-game, but it's literally 2 seconds to kind of figure it out. You have to do one final puzzle, and that's it. And this was a very easy platinum to get, which I like how Insomniac doesn't tie anything to difficulty. It's just,
Yeah, and
can you
that's
do
something that
X, Y, Z?
Sony is starting to make more of a thing with their big focus on accessibility. And some people get up in arms with saying, "Oh, games should have hard things to get." And no, it's not. It's not about benchmarking people against other people, especially in a single player game. If you're playing a multiplayer game, a competitive multiplayer game, and you want to have trophies that are based on like get
Skill
ranked
based.
or win 5 ranked matches or something, it doesn't have to be like best in the world. Some of the early trophy games were like that, like make the top 10 worldwide. It's like if there's a million people playing, then almost nobody's going to get a platinum ever. So especially in the single player games, what they're doing is it's not tied to difficulty. So you can go in, and we can talk about in a little bit here, like all the accessibility options if you can change, but it's about your own personal accomplishments. It doesn't matter what the difficulty is. It's did you experience these things? Not so much, you know, how good are you at these things? It's did you experience these things? And
Yeah.
that I find is a lot better. Nobody is left to feel like, oh man, I'm never going to be good enough to get X because I can't play on hard. I don't have. It's like, oh, I have limited range of motion maybe or something. My hand-eye coordination is no matter what I do, I can never get it to where it's going to need to be to get it on the hard mode. Well, you know what? It doesn't need to be hard. You just have to beat it. It doesn't matter how you beat it. You just have to beat it.
Yeah, like one of the things I'm a big fan of here is let's talk about some of the accessibility options that were present in this game. And it's pretty good for accessibility. There are some things I could see being hard for people that have manual dexterity issues. You can slow the game down. There are options for that. You can make combat really simple. I chose to actually put on one of the combat options where one hit turns into four, and it became a
Okay.
much more cinematic experience
Um,
for me. Like it
you
felt
can
truly like Arkham ranked up to 11.
And it also, you can technically, the way you can customize the controls, you can lower the amount of button presses you have to press in the game, which actually I guess would give you longevity for your controller.
Yeah,
But
I actually did
but
that. Like I turned off quick time events because I just don't want to do them. I hate them. Or
I didn't mind
press
leaving
and
those on.
hold.
Okay, I see. I didn't mind leaving them on myself, but what I did change around, like there are ones where it's like keep pressing a button a bunch of times, where you can switch that to just hold the button.
Mhm.
Um, there are ones I flipped it on and off at a couple points just to see what was different, but there's an option to make all of the puzzles in the mini games more simplistic.
Yeah,
And
I did the
and
exact
what
same
that
thing.
means, is where you get a puzzle and it's like not tic-tac-toe, but you're trying to fit puzzle pieces in, and only certain ends can connect to certain ends. And putting it on the easier mode removes maybe one level of difficulty of, you know, how many pieces have to fit together. So it'll be, less complicated, a little easier. The final one, that's the post game one, is a little more difficult, regardless of what you set it at. But there's one for that. There are like you can have the difficulty set all the way to like the hardest difficulty in the game, but if you're still want to be like, you know what, I don't like having to reload my save every time, you can set the difficulty to the max, but then also individually set it so that you can't be knocked out. So
Yeah,
you can set it so that you can't die essentially, unless you can still fail missions and stuff if it's like, do it in this amount of time, or you can still fall, and then, in a, especially in like a cinematic scripted mission, you could fall behind or something would happen and it might make you restart that. But in regular combat situations or even boss fights, you can have it set to the hardest difficulty, so you're gonna have the most challenge, but not have to repeat because you won't actually get knocked out. You can do that, and that doesn't affect any trophies or anything. Um, you can alter so many aspects of the actual physical gameplay, but also audio wise, you can, because there's characters in the game that use sign language, you can have subtitles on or off, subtitles up to separate degrees of sizes. I still would have liked it to be even bigger because Ubisoft seems to make games where you can like really make the subtitles big, but you can make them bigger. You can have fully captioned that. You can have a screen reader read you everything that happens. If you're somebody who's more visually impaired, they have options to have all the sign language stuff read to you by the screen reader. So they've taken into account a lot of aspects into here. There's visually, you can do things like turn on high contrast modes. You can do colorblind modes. You can change enemy when an enemy is going to do like a hard hit or an unblockable hit. You can change it so that they have a different color. They become a solid color instead of just a flash on the screen to indicate when something's going to happen. There's so many really cool things they've added here.
Yeah, like honestly, I was very pleased with every level of customization you could use to tailor your experience of Spider-Man 2, and it doesn't affect anything that like Alex was talking about. It doesn't affect trophies. It doesn't affect you missing anything. You can see 100% of the game with all the accessibility options tuned to your experience, because that's how I played it, because I wanted to have a story experience that wasn't going to frustrate me like some of the Batman Arkham games can. In fact, Arkham games could learn a lot from this. And I had a freaking blast. So now
Yeah,
that we've talked about accessibility.
I sorry, I swapped difficulties sometimes different parts of the game. I was like, you know what? Let me see what happens if I change this. And the AI changes. It's not just a bullet spongy thing. So it is basically, if you're playing it on like the easiest setting and you're surrounded by a group of enemies, they'll do like the classic like movie thing where only one or two enemies run at you at a time, even if you're surrounded. Whereas putting it on the harder difficulties is every enemy is attacking you at once, so you have to be on your feet. So it's like it makes the AI smarter, not just harder.
Yeah, like it was, like I said, this was a very good experience overall. So now we've talked about accessibility. So one of the things we both got retail versions of this. I bought the upgrade to the digital collector's edition, which gives you a couple of extra skill points and some extra suits. Honestly, the suits weren't that cool. Maybe the biomechanical one, but and the Tokusatsu suit for Miles are the two
I mean,
coolest out of the ones that
I
you get.
I saw that, and I'm very appreciative that we got review copies. But I looked at that, I didn't see personally anything compelling to upgrade, but you did. I'm glad one of us did to see what it would be like.
Yeah,
Um,
like I will always go for the early unlock for skill points, because that
yeah,
definitely helps you in the early game. But I love having everything. If it's a digital doohickey that can't be gotten anywhere else, I'll find a way to get it.
yeah.
Um, Looking at the actual collector's edition for this game, you do get a statue, I think like an art book and some other stuff. It is not great in terms that I think you get a steel book, but I don't think you actually get I think you get a digital code for the game. So, yay, I guess.
Yeah,
Cool.
sometimes that seems to be a more common thing. There's either that, or sometimes they'll give you a steel book and then a regular copy of the game, and you got to put it in. I'm personally one of the fans of back, in the PS3, early PS4 era, where when you ordered a steelbook edition, the disc came in the steelbook, and a lot of times had different disc art.
Yeah, like
Um,
that's how I prefer it too.
but as is, still, that doesn't take away from the quality of the game. That's just, if you're wondering, if you're buying it digitally, your mileage may vary depending on the version you pick up. Physically, if you're a collector, you're probably going to want a statue and all that junk anyway. I'm not
Yeah,
a collector that way. I'm more of the digital player nowadays. You're more of a collector, so it's nice that
not
there's
even
options.
actually. Yeah, like I'm glad the collector's edition exists. I just wish there was maybe a little bit more oomph to it. I have seen better digital collector's editions, but I do like the fact that it is very affordable. It's like $10 to upgrade. You know what? That's worth it to me. I get
Yeah,
my
okay.
little
At that point,
digital.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's where do you want to go from here? Do we
well,
want to talk about the story itself?
I'll talk about just a little bit of the mechanics of how the game is set up.
Okay.
In that it is a shorter game than the first Spider-Man by
Probably about
several hours. I
yeah.
would say it's about 20% shorter of a single player game.
Okay, yeah.
Um, which you may think sounds like a lot, but it's much more concise. There's a bigger variety of things that happen. There's more that happens, and it's less drawn out because there's less time spent grinding. And like in the other ones, it felt like you were forced to do the side missions. A little bit less so in Miles Morales, but it felt like you were forced to do them because if you didn't, you wouldn't have the right upgrades to then complete the game. In this one, I found that the side missions were more compelling to do than in previous ones. There's a decent variety. They unlock as you go along. I don't know if you did the same thing I did, but as soon as a side mission type unlocked, I
Yep.
scoured the entire map to do every single one I could, even trying to find the ones that weren't showing up on the map that were maybe just indicated that that region had them. And there's a couple that are locked to the end of the game that you have to progress through before they unlock. But in doing so, you leveled yourself up. Almost every side mission, actually, I'm willing to say pretty much everyone, except for a couple introductory ones, are long quest lines that when you complete them all, either add backstory to the main story of what's happening so you really understand what's happening as it goes, or is setting up what's potentially going to be the third game, which we won't get into directly, but there's at least two or three of the side quest lines that
That
are
actually goes
clearly go somewhere that are clearly meant to specifically set up a next game in the series.
Yeah,
And then
and to kind of expand upon that, I don't want to say what character was involved. It kind of ties into one of the villains we've already seen revealed as the big bad. And I was like, I appreciate that you actually did that. You brought back this character who hasn't seen a lot of love outside of the animated series. So I'm thinking, all right, that is really cool that you actually did that. I appreciate that. You tied it into the main kind of overall kind of narrative. I was remarkably pleased with that. Like
and
as far
it's not obvious until the
until you
last
literally
mission.
get to the last part. Yeah.
Yeah, when
I
you
was
get
like,
to the last mission and they do a sort of a swerve, but it's not oh my God, that's ridiculous. It's a oh, I should have seen that coming, but I didn't.
yeah. Yeah, like if you're a Marvel Comics person who hunts for the Easter eggs like JT, you're going to have a lot of fun with this. Now, that being said, I want to talk about this for just a couple of seconds. There aren't as many deep cut Marvel references as there were in Spider-Man 1. For example, I seem to recall a Jessica Jones one in the first game, which I think the Netflix show was still airing. The Daredevil reference is not here.
Yeah,
I think if you go to that address, the plaque's no longer there for Nelson and Murdoch.
the
Um,
Avengers building is there, but there's nothing to it. Like there's no like there's not even a comment that's made when you scale it or anything.
which is weird. Although, actually, I'm really glad you mentioned that. There was an interview that somebody did. Like when you bring in other Marvel properties, it gets kind of murky. But there was a comic panel where the Spider-Man from this universe gets referenced in a different Marvel comic, and I think he's talking with maybe even our Spider-Man or our Miles or whatever, and they're like, and he asks the Spider-Man of his universe, "So, hey, where are the Avengers in your universe?" He's like, "Oh, they're there. They're just never around." He's like, "What about you? How many heroes are operating in your city at like any one time?" He's like, "On a good day, maybe half a dozen, maybe a dozen, but everybody's kind of off doing their own thing." And he's like, "I wish we had that kind of help in New York. I feel kind of
Yeah,
alone because it's just
it
me."
it it's hinted very heavily that Spider-Man is the only defender of New York. Like,
Yeah, like
it's odd that the Avengers building is there. It's lit up, but there's no like when you climb the sides of the buildings and they have like you can see people inside of them in this game. There's
yeah.
you can't see into the like there's nothing happening in the Avengers building. It's like they have abandoned the city and have just
Yeah.
gone into space or internationally, and he's literally left as the only like people say like he's the only defender. And it's like that's odd because it was never that Spider-Man was the only defender. He was just
The
he
most
was the
consistent is always
he
there.
he was he was the local like boots on the ground was Daredevil, and
Mhm.
then if you were swinging amongst the skyscrapers, it was Spider-Man, and then if it was anything that had to do with the sky or above, then you had the Avengers.
Yeah, like
And it
now
seems like he's stuck doing it all on his own or with Miles.
yeah, so one of the other Easter eggs, and there is something involving, I'm not going to say too much more beyond that. You do find the Sanctum Sanctorum from Doctor Strange. You do find a couple of other little references to other properties in here, but again, it's not as overt as
Yeah,
say
like
the
the
other
Easter egg.
stuff.
There's the Wakanda Forever salute. That's been on YouTube and everywhere around there. That if you show up as Miles, he'll do a I guess a salute to Chadwick. And there's a few other things. And while it's not a story spoiler, so it's an Easter egg. I may as well we can mention this so because we said mild spoilers.
Mhm.
The longest, probably hardest to achieve side missions collectibles is collecting all the spider bots,
Mhm. And
which are
those are
little.
really nice.
Some of them, the hardest ones to collect is there's some floating in the air that you have to like launch towards and like make sure you press the button at the right time to knock into it or collect it. And once you get all of those, like they're all representing different Spider-Man villains or different universes and so on. And there is a subplot where it's just like, where are these coming from? And then eventually you collect them all, you get a signal, you go to there, and you realize there's a rift into the Spider-Verse movie. And it has nothing to do with the main plot at all. Nothing to do with the plot. So no spoilers. Just that it's there. The someone from there takes them from you and then is like, thanks. And they're like, and you're like, what the hell is going on? And then it just closes up the rift. And then he's just like,
Yeah.
what was that? And your whole team is like, what? And then it just moves on. So who knows? There's no reference as to whether it's going to be tied into another game, or if what's more likely is if whatever happens here, there's going to be some reference in the second part of the Spider-Verse movie that's coming out next year.
Now, I did do a little bit of reading on that specific things. I was curious, like, who the hell is this person? And evidently, that character was cut from the two movies. So the director's like, yeah, you can go ahead and totally do that. We'd love to do more kind of with you. So if you got a cool idea, go for it. So again, I'm really happy to see that level of collaboration that's happening between all the different kind of Marvel properties. So yeah, there are Easter eggs in this games. The Ghostbusters firehouse is back. The Baxter building with the Fantastic Fours there. Multiple suits talk about other things that have happened. My favorite suit from the original game didn't make a comeback, which is unfortunate. I think mine was the
Yeah,
Spider Armor Mark III, which is
yeah.
like
The
super armored version.
my personal favorite armor, or sorry, armor first personal favorite suit, for Peter in this was the like 1940s noir Spider Verse suit because it made him animate at like 12 frames per second. It made him look like he was out of a
Spider
different
Verse.
movie, Spider Verse entirely. And then, of course, I didn't like how every time you got a new suit and unlocked it, you had to unequip it by going to the suit you wanted. I wish that you could have just unlocked suits and just not equip them, because every single time I unlocked a suit for Miles, I had to go back into the list and find the suit with the cat.
Yeah, same here. You and I actually had this conversation on Twitter, and once you unlocked the Bodega Cat suit, you're like, Mike, you're never going to wear anything else. And you were right. I literally did that. And there's some awesome little things that they add to that. The cat Spider-Man will actually participate in certain finishers. And
Yes.
I was very happy to see that
Yes.
level of detail.
It'll be really random, but you'll be doing a finisher where you're flipping over somebody, and if you're flipping over them and spinning over them, he'll reach out and swat at the person's head.
Yeah, or he'll jump out and jump kick them. I saw that
Yeah,
animation come through. I'm
and then
like,
jumps right back. And then what's funny is for very key scenes in the game, very specifically, sometimes your suit will be even though you'll be wearing a different suit for the cinematic. Most of the time, you get to wear the suit that you're currently wearing, but for key scenes, it'll be in a specific suit, and there's a reason for that we won't get into, but that will happen. So I was a little disappointed that you couldn't for every scene be wearing it, but for a lot of the cutscenes, there can be like this really scary, dramatic thing happening, like unnerving and like really creepy, and then you just this cat pops out of the back of your backpack and is like swatting at flies and bees.
yeah,
And it was
that
just
I was so happy that the fact that they left that in and the suit was still doing the animation frames while cutscenes were kind of playing out. Now, could I have asked for maybe a little bit of extra to have the cat react within the context of those scenes? But I had moments, Alex, where it seemed almost as if the cat was reacting in the moment. And I was like, That's really clever. The only time I didn't feel good about having the cat backpack on is where you're fighting over the river and you get knocked in and the cat is clearly in the water with you. I'm thinking, I don't want to drown this cat.
He's
Um,
okay. He's a tiger, right? depending on
I,
the skin you pick for the suit, he's a different colored cat. So if you pick the one where he looks sort of like a tabby, I guess he's a little bit like a tiger. So
I never noticed that. That's clever. For Peter, my favorite suit that I wore 99% of the game once I unlocked it was the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit. So that's the Andrew Garfield one. Before that, I wore a version of the Tom Holland suit, which I think it was the classic from Homecoming. And then once I beat the game, I took the suit that he debuted at the end of Multiverse of Madness was the suit I wore, which is the classic upgraded version, closer to his 1960s gear.
yeah,
Yeah, but all of that, the suit unlockables were pretty cool. Mechanically, the gadgets, I think I liked some of them better in the first game, but maybe that's me misremembering.
yeah, like they were streamlined here. I didn't, even though I played like a ton, I did all the side missions first. I didn't unlock the last gadget till like the end game because
Yeah, that one I
I
came
kept
pretty late.
leveling up. I kept leveling up everything else and using my money to unlock the suits.
Yeah,
So
same here. It
they
it was the
streamlined
hero
everything.
tokens.
And anybody listening that's wondering are they going to mention it? They removed the most annoying mini game that was somewhat required from the last one. There's no timed bombs going off anywhere. You know what I mean? Like remember, uh, go
The
from this
speedball
building.
ones.
Yes, that is the bane of everybody that played the first game. That was the biggest. It's gone. There
Yeah,
are timed missions here, but they are Mysterio
very
missions,
forgiving. Yep.
and they're you basically enter it's a holodeck basically, or you enter an illusion, and then it's like beat up this many people in this time, or they'll give you a don't get hit
Condition.
within 5 minutes, whatever the condition is, and you don't have to get gold to beat it. You don't even have to like beat it. Like bronze is like any time above a certain time limit, and getting bronze, you can be there for, if it's like gold is 3 minutes and bronze is 5 minutes, you could be there for 25 minutes and you still win as long as you beat it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it will count towards completion for the game. I didn't even check. Is there a trophy for getting gold in all of them?
No, there is not. So that is
Exactly.
very appreciated.
Exactly. So there isn't even one for that. It's just, there's one just for completing all of the missions.
Yeah, basically all that would do, because the difference between bronze and silver is nothing. A little bit more experience. The difference between gold and silver is you get an extra hero token. That's
Which
it, which means you
which I
might
got
unlock some stuff a little bit faster.
I got gold on I think 3 of them out of, I think there's what, 8 or 9 of them or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I was
Um
about the same.
and all I had to do was I had to travel around town at the end game, which, if you're wondering, through things that happen at the near the end of the game, you are then able to see things on the mini map a little easier, to find chests and stuff that will give you your upgrades easier. Things that were maybe a little more hidden and harder to find, or finding those spider bots, which could be very difficult if you went looking for them. Otherwise, they will show up on your radar a little better later on, and finding them tends to give you enough stuff. I only had to spend about an hour and a half going around town finding some stuff to get the last points I needed to finish the upgrades to my abilities, like my health and suits and all that, to max out everything and get all the trophies. So if you get gold on all of them, it means that you can level up faster. That's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically it. And if I did have to give one pro tip, save a lot of your upgrade gear, like hero tokens and rare components, for suit tech, which you get probably about a couple hours into the game.
Yeah.
But other than that, have fun unlocking suits. You don't need to power level anybody specifically, but I did take a piece of advice Alex did, because he did beat beat the game before me. I upgraded
I
Miles
mainlined
first.
this game. I mainlined this game in 48 hours and did a full playthrough.
Yeah, it took me about 35 hours over the course of a week, but you did this in just a little over 48 in like 2 days. So you were a machine in this.
It came
But
out on the
yeah.
weekend, and I had no other commitments, and I went, yes.
So let's talk about the story here. Again, we're going to
Oh,
avoid a vast
yeah,
majority of
yeah.
spoilers.
Yeah, sorry, we sort of briefly touched on it when you were mentioning it. There are 3 skill trees to level up, Peter, Miles, and
And
then
a
there's
joint
one that's
tree.
for both, a joint tree. I just went with what I thought was most logical, and it turned out to be best. Is leveled up the joint skill tree first, because you are swapping between characters, and then I decided to level up Miles because I just had a feeling, and it's not that you play more as Miles; it's just earlier on in the game you tend to play as Miles more. Some
Yeah,
of his
and
mission
honest
some of his missions are earlier on, and there are points later on where having him leveled up earlier in the game is going to help you later in the game.
Oh yeah, like I liked having all my abilities as maxed out as I could, and once I unlocked a new path in within Miles or Peter, I was ready to blow the lid off things, and it made certain combats a lot more cinematic, a lot more fun, and I was telling this to Alex because he's been showing in the trailers. By the time I got to the lizard fight, I was level 54. There are 60 levels in the game. I was near maxed
And
by this point.
for anybody questioning like where is that in the game, I looked. It's exactly the 50% wave mark in the game.
Yeah,
There,
so
it's like there's 30 whatever 30. I think it's 31 main missions, um, and it is number 15. I think it's like
yeah,
directly in the middle.
so yeah, I was really, really OP, which made me feel more like Spider-Man. I felt like the guy who'd been protecting the city for years upon years, and it was fun. Uh, People were really complaining about having Mary Jane missions in the first game. They do come back, but they're way more fun. Like
They're
a
way better,
lot more fun.
and if you are concerned, you're like, oh man, these suck. I'm really not good at stealth.
Don't
Turn
worry about it.
on if you have it turned on to the not getting knocked out mode. I realized this part way through. You can get hit by like 100 enemies tearing you apart, and you don't even fall down.
Yeah, you're
If
like,
you
ha ha, you just tank it.
so even if for the rest of the game you want to play on hard, but you're like, I really don't like stealth missions, and you don't even want to really do stealth, like there is not really a fail state for getting caught.
No,
So
they just
if
get
you
more
do get caught,
aggressive.
they just get more aggressive. So just for that mode, go. You're like, oh crap, switch it all to the easiest mode. Turn on not dying, and then just tase everybody like you're a superhero yourself, just running up to them and blah blah blah. And like I said, there is no fail state. Like if I get caught, something bad happens. The bad thing that happens is normally you get swarmed and you'll die in like 2 hits. But if you
Yeah,
turn it on easy, you don't have to worry about it at all. And that what that helped with was going around. There are parts in her missions that, yes, you have to go to a pathway a certain way. There's an end goal, but if you go off and you deviate left or right, you might enter a room where there's more lore you can read that isn't necessarily required. Again, mild spoiler. For anybody that's wondering, Vulture's not in the game. And reason Vulture's not in the game is Vulture's dead, but you wouldn't know that unless you went off the beaten path slightly and then, read a computer screen that isn't required.
yeah, like there's a lot of really interesting things here. And I will say there were certain characters I'm thinking, oh, so that's what happened. Shit.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
was
there's that.
so
And
pleased with that.
the only reason I meant Vulture mentioned it is because it's not critical to the story. It's just if you were wondering, some of these other villains come back. Why isn't Vulture? Well, because Vulture ain't there no more.
Yeah, like I mean, to talk about the story of Spider-Man 2 again, we'll avoid as many spoilers as we can. It happens a couple years after Miles Morales after he's defeated the Tinkerer. Peter's obviously defeated Dr. Octopus. They're both saving New York as the Spider-Men. Miles is getting ready to go off to school, but he has trouble writing his like essay. Peter is obviously
he's
having that
gifted.
Parker luck.
Yeah, Miles is a gifted kid, but he's not as academically focused. You know, he wants to study musical tech and audio theory and yada, and he's obviously gone to a gifted school. He's smart. He just doesn't have the focus that Peter did. So the baseline story is, or the B line is, he is trying to in for his teenage life, he's trying to write an essay, an entrance exam essay for a university, and then get a professor or somebody to maybe put in a good word for him. That's his side. Peter's side is Peter has at some point been fired or no longer working in journalism at all, and he's been given the opportunity to be a teacher at Miles's school, but that doesn't go well in the prologue of the game. And he's trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? I want to be, I'm Spider-Man, but I want to live a normal life, and there's a contention between him. He wants MJ to move in with him. MJ wants to focus on her career, and that's the humanity side of the setup before all the craziness happens.
I mean, from a storyline standpoint, I'm really pleased with a lot of the twists and turns this game took. I really like how they introduced Venom. We all called it back in Spider-Man 1 when we saw that post-credit scene. Really, there are some Marvel Easter eggs hidden in there with Venom that they don't really go deep into or even talk about at all. When it comes to the origin of Venom, thinking, all right, I like how they've updated this. I like how they're connecting it to the more easily referenced Marvel 616, which is the universe that they inhabit. Yeah. But overall, I'm very pleased with the story missions. The side missions are no longer annoying. There's a couple that are easier than they should be, but emotionally, there's a couple of them that pay off in some really good ways. Without telling you specifically what happens, there's a mission involving a lost grandfather, which is really good. Please do that one. And the mission that I really liked involves a blind lady thinking there's a monster in her backyard. And I really liked how that one concluded.
He's got allergies.
Yeah, like it's so cleverly written. And then there's even a side mission where you play it as a character I did not expect, and they change the sensory experience for it. And you might think it might be a little goofy and stupid, but there's a moment in that mission where you have to cause a distraction. And it reminded me an awful lot of Dr. Wily at one point. And for those of you that don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, Dr. Wily was my cat who passed away about a year ago. And there's a moment where you come across this cat lying in bed and he's hugging a toy, just like how Wily used to.
I saw that and I was like, oh, this is going to wreck Mike.
Yeah. And it did.
Well, not to mention, I was, you know what's so odd? I was more scared and apprehensive playing that mission with the sensory stuff changing. Mm-hmm. Because even though you weren't really going to be in danger, you didn't know if you were going to be in danger, but you weren't. It's so unnerving when when you're always on edge because you can't be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, because I was expecting something to jump out at you when it actually has a very heartwarming conclusion.
Yeah. You also move very slowly compared. It tries to show that, hey, normally when you're playing as a superhero, guess what? You move around quick because you're a superhero. The reality is people don't move that fast. So like when I thought like, oh my God, am I being followed? And you go to turn around, you're like, I don't turn around on a dime anymore. And it's like, oh, it's unnerving.
Yeah, like I was very pleased with how that mission kind of plays off. All the side characters, there was nobody truly unlikable. There was nobody that really stood out as I'm just here to fill a niche.
and
everybody had a part to play, and I love that.
not just that, because of the way they streamline things, pretty much most of the side missions, there are some that are like helping New York citizens, but a
Mhm.
lot of them have to do with previous villains. And a big theme in this game is um
Second chances.
second chances, trust and redemption. Um you don't know in this game, and we're not going to spoil anything. You don't know any single villain that you've come across except for Vulture, where we said he's dead. But every villain in this game, you really truly don't know. One, are they bad? Are they good? If they're a previous villain, have they been reformed? Are they trying? Are they lying to you? Is somebody truly evil? Is somebody truly good? It's not even like it's ambiguous. It's not even going down the realm of like, oh, nobody's good or evil. It's written in such a way that you don't know until you conclude the mission whether or not somebody is good or bad. And it will set up things in the future, like we had mentioned, like for a next game, where you have an idea of, oh, this villain is probably going to return next game as a villain, or this villain might return next game as somebody on my team that
Yeah, like I was
that truly wants to help people and wants to pay you back for the good you did for them.
yeah, there were two redemptive arcs in this game I did not expect. Like I was like, wow, I did not see that coming. There's one especially, it's very close to the end game with one of the Spider-Men, and I was like, "Oh, really? That's how you're gonna play that?"
Very well
That
handled.
is
Like,
cool.
handled super
Very
well.
well handled. Yeah, like I'm honestly surprised, and it's made me care more about certain villains. Or I'm gonna be maybe looking them up on Wikipedia, or maybe we'll talk about them on Loose Cannon because there isn't a or not Loose Cannon on Sunday Funnies where because since JT is the comic book guy and the Spider-Man guy, I kind of want to look into how Insomniac's portrayal of these characters changes from either the Ultimate Universe or the Marvel 616 stuff.
Yeah, because
I'm very
I don't know a lot either about like the only character like I knew a little bit about, because I'm not a big comic reader, was Sandman, because obviously we see him in the opening. He's one of the first quest lines you can do. Is you don't have to do any of them outside of the first quest for it, but the portrayal here is very similar to the Sam Raimi slash how he appeared in the final Spider-Man, or the most recent Spider-Man movie, right? Like as a reluctant villain, where
Mhm.
he's not a bad guy. Like even when we watched No Way Home, right?
Mhm.
Spoilers for the movie that's now what, 3 or 4 years old, 3 years old,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. Uh, but like in that, like when he first shows up, the first thing he's like, Spider-Man, I'm here to help. And then he doesn't understand, like he doesn't realize that he's been ripped into a different world.
Yeah, that's what I meant when earlier I said Multiverse of Madness, I meant No Way Home. But yeah, like there's a lot of really cool stuff that they do with the villains and the side characters in this game that they're so well written. This is Insomniac's universe, and I'm
And
glad we've gotten the games that we've gotten so far.
and I'll say this, every character, even the more complex villains, they're not simple evil. And like to the point where, like, how often do we see like Norman Osborn, and is either he's portrayed as just evil businessman Lex Luthor, or evil, uh and like in this, it's no surprise because we've seen in the trailers for the game that the Osborns are in this, right? And you
Mhm.
see him, and the dude is a super loving father, and not like, he just wants to control everybody. Loves his son, loves Peter because his son has, such a good friend in him. Like legitimately does that. Does like in his career has done morally ambiguous or ethically wrong things, but does not come across as evil. And so it's hard to hate him. It's hard to hate most of the villains in this entire franchise, and that's probably why Spider-Man's villains have always been pretty strong.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that the Insomniac verse has set up a lot of things it really makes you want to learn more about these villains. It's different than anything we've seen in the MCU. It's different than we've seen in animation. It's different in a lot of the ways that matter. And when this series concludes in probably 2025, 2026,
Well,
because
'cause
they still have that Wolverine game to work on.
I was gonna say, like, this is about Spider-Man, but it's yet to be seen how Wolverine, if at all, ties into this. Like,
Yeah,
are are,
and
are we gonna like? It could be a completely standalone, but I don't know if they would want to do that. If it's supposed to be like Marvel's Wolverine and Marvel's this from Sony, is it like it's entirely possible that just literally like, are we going to play the Wolverine game and think that it's completely separate, and then we'll see a scene or something or a cutscene, and we see Spider-Man in it or something? Like, we don't know. We don't know, because the talk is that game might be made at M for mature,
mhm.
right? So if it's mature, would they want to have that with this? You know what I mean? Like, is it, would they want to keep them separated a little bit, or do they want them together? Like, so speculating is one thing, but like they've got that game, and then we have to assume that Spider-Man 3 is going to come before the end of this life cycle of the console. So you're thinking like 2020. How fast Insomniac works? It could be 2025 or 2026.
Yeah, like I'll be very curious to see where this goes, but overall, I'm super impressed. Now, before we begin to close out our time here with Spider-Man 2, let's talk about some of the problems we had. I had
Yeah.
multiple hard crashes. I
Yeah.
did have a glitch where some of my audio wouldn't come through, or I couldn't grab a spider bot. So how I had to solve that is I would try to reload the checkpoint, and most of the time that would work. I had an instance where I wondered if it messed up my save. So I literally had to reboot the entire game, not the console, but I rebooted the game, did a fresh instance of it, and it worked fine. I ran into this a couple of times.
Yeah.
I had
I
a
had
visual glitch, which was funny. There's a point where you run into another person who's going to be working with you, and they're having a conversation on a rooftop. In my instance, the rooftop didn't appear, so they were floating in the air. So that was kind of funny. And then the other one, I had another instance where a cutscene partially cut off. The game crashed. So I was like, oh my God. So I went on the YouTube, found the fight that I was in and the aftermath, which is the cutscene, and I missed maybe 5 seconds. So the game's ability to reload you into a place where you need to be is very, very smart. I never had anything where I'd have to replay I didn't even have sections to Alex where I'd have to go and replay multiple minutes. I had something I'd maybe have to replay maybe a minute.
I did 2 or 3 times. I had 2 or 3 hard crashes, and remember, I was playing it shortly before the midnight release, so I had it a
Mhm.
day early. But in playing that, there wasn't a day one patch. There is a patch coming in December apparently to fix some of these things, but I did have a crash a couple times, hard crash. I had it hard crash when trying to load a cinematic, and I was like, and then rebooted the whole console, and then it was fine. There is a mission where and I heard that a few people had the similar issue, where there's a mission where you are in a place where things can explode and pressure is building up, and you'll know what I'm talking about. There's a person you're trying to save in the center of like a furnace, and in there you're supposed to go up to this control panel after beating all the enemies and turn things off. It would not load the press button to do things. Like, it was not loading the instance at all. So I could walk up towards the console and nothing would appear, and it would just play in a loop forever. I had to reload the save a couple times. Um, and luckily the one time I just reloaded the checkpoint and it just magically worked after like 5 or 6 times. So I lost about 30 minutes.
Oh
But
wow.
that's the only event that happened with it, and it was only the one time, but I was freaking out. You can make individual saves, but what it does for making your individual save, it will then use that save to make um all of your progress saves throughout. So you could potentially, when you make a new save, go back to something, but it's kind of a pain to have to make a new save every so often for it. Luckily, game loads super fast. The whole world basically loads. Like when you're like gliding through, there is no transition from zone to zone.
Oh,
Um,
it's so fast.
and when you do get fast travel is unlocked by beating missions within certain zones. Get to I think it's the silver level out of, like, there's bronze, silver, and gold achievements for beating so many missions within each little town area. When you get to the silver, it gives you fast travel, and you can fast travel across the area, and it just sort of zooms out and then zooms into the area where you're loading to, and you'll already be gliding. And it's like 3 seconds from way across the map. Not even.
Yeah,
Uh,
like that made me doing certain completionist run things where I was trying to go for my trophy so much easier. I'm thinking, oh great, now I don't have to fly across the map. I can literally just take 3 seconds and I'm right there.
yeah, I didn't encounter really any audio issues with it. Like you said,
I
you had a little bit.
I had one in the final mission where you're doing the final thing where they say, "Look, man, you're not coming back from this." The audio
Oh
didn't
yeah,
go through.
they do give you that warning. Don't start this until you realize that this is the end game. Um,
So
but when you do
right at
that, once
yeah.
you've completed the game, it is
Mhm.
like other modern open games where it will create a save and you load in after, and you can still go and complete your side missions afterwards.
Yeah.
So don't worry if you didn't complete them beforehand, but it does give you a warning saying, hey, this is your last chance to level up all of your gear before attempting the end.
Mhm.
So if you have trouble after this point, just know that you might want to make a save because you'll have to come back to this. So they're good at doing that. It's one of the only times that they like break the fourth wall to let you know anything. Um, but they did a pretty good job of keeping the pace. It never felt like anything took too long to do.
Yeah, nothing was really dragged out. I mean, if I did have one complaint, and it's just the way that I love to play the Spider-Man games, I wish there were more instances to do stealth focus sections. Like I used to love the original Spider-Man's sections where you'd go into an underground area and you'd have to get through there without getting
Oh, I hate
detected, and
that.
you'd have to I
I
love.
hate stealth. So for me, it was good that I didn't have to care about that at all.
See, I used to go back. One of the things I did during my kind of playthrough is when I would do missions where you have to find hunters, and that's all I'm really gonna say about it, is you could complete those. If you could do it without getting detected, they wouldn't call in reinforcements. So what I would do, I would reload a save if I got detected, but I forgot a certain character has an advantage in those sections. I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. So I would literally pick these people off one at a time, and it was so satisfying. There's even one skill tree, or there's one skill in the mutual tree where you can take down two people at once stealth wise. Oh my god, Alex, I was clowning. I was killing bases in like 2 or 3 minutes, completely stealth. And I'm like, and I am Spider-Man. It was so much fun. I love those sections.
And
Um,
I mean, like, there is a pretty good variety in here. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that we might want to mention that
there are
wasn't great.
different there were some different gameplay areas where you take control. There's actually 2 or 3 vehicle sections, and don't worry, it's not Grand Theft Auto, but I was like, I didn't see this coming, and the fact that Insomniac made that work with this engine really
Well,
impresses me.
it's you didn't play Ratchet and Clank. Um,
No.
they took a couple things from Ratchet and Clank. There are sections here where you're slinging through warp, basically warp bubbles,
Hmm.
and that's straight up from Rift Apart. And the other element is there are parts where you're controlling a spider robot and where you're controlling a drone. Those are directly out of parts of Ratchet and Clank where you're controlling a little tiny robot drone, nanobot, that goes in and kills viruses that are inside of technology. And that is identical. Like it's you could see they took elements of that engine and put it here. And
Yeah.
that's probably how they were able to get things done so quickly because, they had 2 games under their belt with engines that they could meld together.
Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah,
shows
like
technical prowess of them, and also the willingness to let them experiment.
yeah, and it left me wanting more. Like the ultimately, I want
Yeah.
more Spider-Man.
Yeah, like literally to conclude this, my thoughts on this game, it's better than the first. It builds upon what Miles did. It's a little shorter, but it never feels like you're being shortchanged. You get a fulfilling story on almost every conceivable angle. There are
And it's probably the best looking PlayStation 5 game.
100%. I was surprised to see my reflection in things I wasn't expecting.
Well,
I was like,
it's ray tracing on all the time. Like it's weird. Final Fantasy 16 has a couple of sections that are the best looking graphics of this generation. Basically the icon battles. And then this has overall the best looking game on I would say of this generation on console so far.
yeah, like I would say this is absolutely a must-have for your PlayStation 5 library. Do you need to play Miles Morales and Spider-Man 4 to understand what's happening here? Yes. Do you need to 100% each of those games? No. But it definitely helps give you the emotional center for each character, and it is a wonderful experience from start to finish. You never feel bored. You're constantly engaged. The side missions are fun. The only one I didn't much care for were some of the puzzle ones, but considering the payoff you get post game, I felt very satisfied doing that. And this is probably for me anyway, this is probably my game of the year. And that's above Resident Evil 4, which was fantastic. I haven't had a chance to play Super Mario Wonder, so maybe my thing will change in a week. But I'm not seeing Mario beating this as my game of the year.
As far as console exclusives for the PlayStation, it's going to be neck and neck between this and Final Fantasy, and this is probably like objectively the better game. You know, it's all going to depend on how big of a fanboy of Final Fantasy you are, but this is like I would say objectively the best game on PlayStation this year.
Yeah, so folks, you are not wasting your time with this game. I think it is absolutely worth 100% of however you decide to swing across New York. So once again, thank you to Sony for sending us a couple of review codes for this game. I thoroughly enjoyed my time. I'm glad I got my platinum. And I've heard across Twitter and I think in a couple of interviews, I don't think Insomniac is planning any DLC plans for this game, but a new game plus is going to be done in just a couple of weeks. So there will be an option to go through the storyline again with all your unlocked abilities, which admittedly maybe I'll do for fun.
Plus, supposedly all the fixes for the little issues we already had, as well as a big accessibility update with even more features.
Yeah, because the Sony does have its accessibility controller coming out, I think, by December. So keep your eyes out for that. So anyway, guys, for This Week in Geek, we are swinging across the city. We have been
Alex, the producer.
I've been Mike the Birdman saying thwip thwip, and we'll see you guys next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man. Is he strong? Listen, bud, he's got radioactive blood. Can he swing from a thread? Take a look overhead. Hey there goes the Spider-Man.